He's an honorary citizen of 3 countries, Israel, Canada, and the United States. He helped save 100,000 Jewish Hungarians from the Nazis. He was sent to exile in Russia, but his legacy lives on today. Stay tuned to learn about the life and goodness of Swedish diplomat and rescuer Raoul Wallenberg, and the one man who went to the federal court in the United States to rescue Raoul Wallenberg from the Russian Gulag.
For nearly 2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of His people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. And now, here is your host, Rosalie Giroux.
Shalom and welcome to The Crossover. Today's show, we have Morris Wolf with us. Thank you for joining us, Morris.
Pleasure to be here.
And we're sitting in the Holocaust Museum. Let me tell you a little bit about Morris. He is the author of Whatever Happened to Raoul Wallenberg, and he served under President John F. Kennedy as legal counsel in Department of Justice and worked directly with Attorney General Robert Kennedy and the President. In 1983, with Rosa Parks, he was awarded the National Council of Christian Jews Medal for service on civil rights. And in 1993, he received United Nations Peace Award for humanitarian service on the same stage with Audrey Hepburn. And in 2005, the U.S. Congress awarded him for his work in seeking the release of Raoul Wallenberg. So it's quite a pleasure to meet a righteous lawyer who is doing a work that our God, who's a great judge, his heart is for those things that you have been fighting for.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I just wanted to let you folks know that today we're filming in the Holocaust Museum, but it also happens to be that during the 10 days of awe, Rosh Hashanah, the call to repentance happened just a few days ago. So I think it's quite apropos that we're here filming during this open heaven time, during this sanctified time where we're supposed to look inside of ourselves and check, who have we done wrong to? What sins have we committed to others in thought, word, or deed? Or what things have we not done that we should have done? And the fact that we're talking about Raoul Wallenberg, a great rescuer, righteous among the nations on such a time as this, at this hour, is appropriate, don't you think?
Absolutely. This
Yes.
is the perfect time because Wallenberg had a deep regard for Judaism and for things Jewish, and yet he was a Christian gentleman. He was a Lutheran who came from Sweden at age 32 at the call of our United States government to go to a very dangerous situation in Hungary in World War II and the effort to rescue the endangered Jewish population. So it's a very ecumenical story.
The reason that you're seeing me interview Morris today, and usually you see Mitch, is because my family is from Hungary, and when the Nazis were in Hungary, Christians hid my parents for a whole year while they were there, and most of my family were destroyed, though. However, my aunt did survive, but she went to Auschwitz. She's been living in Israel. She survived Auschwitz.
Wow.
And my uncle Mickey fought in the Haganah. He hid all throughout Hungary during that time. And I just was wondering, I was so passionate about meeting you and just learning more about Raoul, wondering if, some of my family was saved because of him,
Oh, I believe so. And I think it's magic that we're together today. It's one more spiritual moment in my own journey to rescue Wallenberg, that I meet people who were touched by Wallenberg, saved by Wallenberg. I met Judith Yoron in Israel while I was doing my research. She was a secretary to Wallenberg in his office in Budapest. And she was only 19 when she served in this way. But I met her by chance. I was teaching in Switzerland. I went to the bridge at Avignon and saw 3 young girls dancing on the bridge at Avignon. Mm-hmm. And one was wearing
Sur le pont d'Avignon.
Sur le pont d'Avignon, on y danse, on y
On y
danse.
danse.
And I jokingly said, well, where are you from? And one teased me, said, can't you read? It says Brandeis. And I said, well, what do you do? She said, I study human rights. She said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm an international lawyer. I'm teaching in Switzerland this summer, but I'm the lawyer for Raoul Wallenberg. She said, did you say Wallenberg? I said, Raoul Wallenberg. She said, my Aunt Judith was Wallenberg's secretary in Budapest.
Wow.
So 3 days later, I was on the plane going to Tel Aviv to meet Judith Joron at the Hilton Hotel for her to fill me in on 3 of the most important chapters about Wallenberg that appear in my new book, Whatever Happened to Raoul Wallenberg, because she took him down to the synagogue on Rosh Hashanah evening. She said, you must put your work away. The Jews are waiting to meet you at synagogue. And as he entered the synagogue and the menorah and the bright light coming through the windows, the Jews reached out as they often do to touch the Torah, but in this case they reached just to touch his garments because they considered him a saint who had come to rescue them from the Holocaust.
We will be right back. For nearly 2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of His people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. The Crossover exists to communicate to the Jewish community that there is a growing group of Christians who love them unconditionally. The focus of the Crossover program is to promote a greater understanding of the differences and similarities between Jewish and Christian customs, history, and theology, while encouraging a closer walk with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As a second-generation Holocaust survivor, Rosalie's Jewish heritage includes parents who were protected from the Nazis by Christians. Yet for more than a decade, Mitch and Rosalie searched for meaning in life in the New Age movement. But after returning to their Judeo-Christian roots, they discovered God's purpose for their lives: to rebuild bridges between Christians and Jews. Now through TV, radio, the internet, speaking engagements, the healing room, and print and video resources, they are reuniting Jews and Christians in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Join Mitch and Rosalie as they tackle tough topics and welcome dynamic guests on The Crossover. The Promised Land.
And I also tried to make it very clear to the Christians all over the world that they are threatened to the same extent as the Jews and Israel are threatened. And I also say basically that Jews and Christians are waiting for the Messiah, who is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. And that Messiah is going to come to Jerusalem. And so Christians share this faith with the Jews.
The Hebraic roots of Christianity.
And we began looking at Jesus through Jewish spectacles and not our Texas spectacles or American spectacles or even Western culture spectacles. He's so much more glorious. He's so much more grand. It does not in any way detract from the fact that he's the Son of God, the risen Savior, but he's also a man.
Judaism 101.
Many times people ask, what is a Jew? Is it a race? Is it a people? Is it a culture?
Jewish-Christian relations. Bible, fact or fiction? For more information on The Crossover and The Crossover Project, contact Rosalie Jerome or log on to our website. Here is your host, Rosalie Jerome.
In your book, are you mentioning other testimonies of people who've been saved by him?
Absolutely. A young woman living today in Toronto, Canada, her mother was pregnant during these difficult days and had no place to go. Raoul Wallenberg gave up his apartment for the night. He walked the streets of Budapest till dawn. This woman gave birth, and then I met this child during my travels on the Holocaust. And the same thing with Abram Spitz in Phoenix, Arizona, a very successful real estate man there. But he was saved by Wallenberg. He actually had to go into the Danube River with a reed just to breathe through as the Gestapo were coming through. Then Wallenberg came back, pulled him out, brought him back to the Wallenberg office where he was rescued. So I've met 30 to 40 people who were saved by Wallenberg.
Tell me how you got involved in trying to rescue Wallenberg. How did that
Well,
happen?
I was practicing law in Philadelphia. I'd gone to Germantown Friends School, a Quaker school, so I became very interested in human rights and in the needs of the oppressed. I first wanted to become a lawyer because I saw the way the magistrates' court shabbily treated people who had drinking problems, who were picked up off the streets of Philadelphia, and prostitutes who were in the jail cell for the night, Saturday night. And I saw this judge abusing these people, and I said, that's not right. I want to be the lawyer for the undefended. And I went to law school, and I came back and I changed the magistrate court system of Philadelphia 10 years later as the chief assistant DA. That's how big an impact wanting to become a lawyer had for me.
Wow.
Then one day, in March of 1983, I got a phone call at 4 a.m. in the morning at my home in Chestnut Hill in Philadelphia. Are you Morris Wolf? Yes, I am. Your name's been given to us as a lawyer who may help us. Who are you? This is Raoul Wallenberg's brother. I want to come to Philadelphia and discuss your representing us. Well, that was the day I first made the connection. Why they found me? Besheret, just one of those destiny moments. They could have found a lawyer in Stockholm or Washington, D.C. or New York, but someone had passed my name up the line to them as someone who would have the guts and courage to face up to the Soviets and to try to persuade them that the good thing in life was to let this man go, that it had been a terrible mistake, and that he should go home to his family.
Most people would think that he would have been taken by the Hungarian Nazis or, you know, instead of the Russians.
Well, he befriended the Hungarian government. He was a charming man, and he charmed the wife of the foreign minister, Khomeini, and she actually came in on his side. So Minister Khomeini and Mrs. Khomeini became his friends. Wallenberg had a great ability to create allies, people who would join his cause, because he was very temperate and soft-spoken, but it was like an iron fist in a velvet glove when it came time to rescue. He'd go on top of the boxcars. He would have printed passports the night before, admittedly forgeries, but they looked like Swedish passports. The Hungarian Arrow Cross had a great respect for documentation. He'd thrust these passports in their face and say, look, this man's on the train by mistake. He's a Swedish citizen. Wallenberg was a great actor as well as a great humanitarian. And they'd bring these families off the boxcars and back to the safe houses that Wallenberg had created under a Swedish flag. So I was just impressed the morning I got the phone call. Why me? Why am I given this opportunity to walk in the corridors of history as a lawyer for this great man? I started my research immediately. I went down to the university.
I feel I have to say something.
Go ahead.
When I was reading a bit about Raoul today, it was like I was weeping when I read about the boxcars.
Right, right.
Especially the part I read where even the Nazi, like one of the Nazi superiors said, shoot him. Mm-hmm. He was
That's
on the
right.
box, and they
That's right.
chose not to shoot. And they shot, but they on purpose
In the air, above his
in the air
head.
above his head, because they were so impressed that he had such courage and that he would do such a mitzvah.
Yeah,
a
you're
thing.
exactly right. He had gained such a positive reputation in Budapest, even among those who were supposed to be opposing him, that they would find a means to shoot above his head rather than shoot him. They respected him. That here's a man at age 32 had the courage to leave a comfortable home in Sweden. He was dating Viveka Lindford's and Ingrid Bergman at the time and living a beautiful life. I tell some of my audiences, if I had been his lawyer at that time, I'm not sure what advice I would have given him to leave such a good life of playing polo and dating these starlets. Yeah, but he didn't hesitate. The U.S. government asked him to go, and that's why I've always felt it's the obligation of the U.S. government to bring him home. He was really our diplomat clothed in Swedish garment, because we were at war with both Hungary and Germany, so we couldn't send a diplomat. There goes Raoul Wallenberg. I have asked my government to come in alongside me in an amicus curiae brief, that is a friend of the court brief, to support my effort. But I must admit, with all candor, it has been a lonely vigil of private counsel pursuing this matter. President Clinton helped me. I went to the White House November 22nd, 1993, 30 years after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I sat with President Clinton in the Oval Office with his assistant, Neil Wallen, Jewish Deputy National Security Advisor. He said, Morris, Wallenberg is my hero too. I'll take a note to Yeltsin on my next meeting, asking Yeltsin to reopen the doors of the prison. So my effort has not just been in court. When I went to court, I won a $39 million verdict, which is unheard of up to that time. First time that
When you say a $39 million verdict, what does that mean?
That means I filed the lawsuit against the Soviet Union, as I had to. They had kidnapped him. They had detained him. They've even admitted that, so I'm not saying anything new. And instead of giving an apology and letting him go, they, for some reason, detained him. I think they were embarrassed, frankly, that he would have said too much were he to be released. So Judge Parker asked me in court, well, Mr. Wolf, how much damages do you think are appropriate for this matter? I said, well, at least $1 million for every year of incommunicado captivity, and he's still there, Your Honor. And he banged his gavel down and said, $1 million for each year of captivity, 39 years, $39 million. I order the Russians to produce him in my courtroom in 30 days, and if they claim he's not alive, then bring in an autopsy report and his remains. One way or the other, we have to have closure.
Okay, what year was that? I'm sorry?
October 18, 1985.
What happened?
Russians ignored the decision. They snubbed it. They went behind my back to the U.S. State Department to ask the State Department to fish their hot chestnuts out of the fire. A Jewish legal advisor at the State Department joined and filed a statement of interest against my decision in an effort to derail the verdict. The rest your listeners can read about in my book, Whatever Happened to Raoul Wallenberg. So I faced a lot of political
Persecution.
turbulence that I should never have faced.
Because we sent him there.
We sent him there. We virtually seduced him to go. We took him to dinner at the Bells Manor Hotel in Sweden and said, will you do this for us? We have your back. We'll come get you if we need to. We know it's dangerous.
It's a righteous cause,
Very.
considering 100,000 Jews were saved from the Nazis.
Right.
That people should take the time to try to rescue this man
they should
who
have rallied
rescued
to my side. They should have said, let's go, let's do everything positive. But what I found out is that Congressman Tom Lantos, who was saved by Wallenberg, and he was head of the Senate, the House Foreign Relations Committee, he and his wonderful wife Annette came in alongside me. I spoke to Annette just 2 days ago. We keep up a wonderful relationship. And he got 5 or 10 congressmen to come to my effort. David Gergen, who's still on TV as a newscaster, I met with him at the White House. I said, David, help me get the support of my government to come in behind me. I took action. I took action right away. The morning I got that phone call at 4 a.m., I was down in the university library that afternoon, and by the grace of God found Elizabeth Arnold, who's a retired librarian, and she took me to the rare book room. She opened it up, said, here's a law from 1789. This will allow you to go into an American court and sue on a violation of the law of nations. Wallenberg was a diplomat. That's one of the violations of the law of nations. This wonderful woman was with me the whole way, and because I went down on a Saturday morning when there was nothing else happening, she took me to the fifth floor, opened this closed place. There were letters from Benjamin Franklin. There was the original copy of the Gutenberg
Bible. Philly?
In Philadelphia.
You're watching The Crossover. We'll be right back. Stay tuned, because you're going to hear how Morris influenced the Mossad in Israel to get Wallenberg.
But finally, the news came back to Budapest that Raoul Wallenberg is going to come, and that the Swedish government had a pact with Germany that Sweden will supply Germany with 6,000 trucks in exchange for 6,000 Jews. But since the Jews could not be shipped out during the war to Sweden, they allowed Raoul Wallenberg to buy apartment buildings and house them and until the war will be over, supposedly. And then my brother notified me about that house that they found out from American Jewish organization that there is one. And Raoul Wallenberg was a very quiet, very unassuming individual, and he usually worked from the background. And the house where we were in was the house of a glass factory, and there were glass crates in the basement. That's where several hundred people lived, in the basement with one light hanging from the air. And there was a second floor where them offices were. I was very good at calligraphy. I don't know where I learned it, but I could do it. And as people escaped from the labor camps, found out about that house, that they can get saved there, they all congregated in front of the house trying to get in. Some of them succeeded. And for those, we had to make out some Schutzpass, which means a passport. And of course, it wasn't the one that the Swedish government issued, that we forged as a passport by the Swedish government. And so I worked in that office, and I saw occasionally, but he usually worked from the background. Most of the time I was in the basement, but to do my forging work, I had to go up to the office, and he gave me the passport, and he gave me the stool, whatever, I mean the pens and so on. And I worked in the office because I couldn't do that in the basement. There was no chair, there was no table to sit down. I think it was close to 6,000 people, maybe more, because when one apartment building was full, in every room there was only one family, he had to buy another apartment building. And a few weeks later that was full, and so he bought several apartment buildings until the war ended. And I don't know how many people just moved on those buildings, but there were altogether, according to my information, about 6,000 Jews from Budapest saved by Raoul Wallenberg.
Here is your host, Rosalie Giroux.
Welcome back to The Crossover. We're here with Morris Wolf, who has been focusing on rescuing a rescuer, Raoul Wallenberg.
The reason I've enjoyed the work so much has been the human connections I've made. People like Judith Uron, sitting with President Clinton in the White House alone, having him say, "Wallenberg's my hero too, I will help you." And even our present president, Barack Obama, has not only endorsed my book, but the efforts they made with the SEALs to find bin Laden were a copy of the efforts made by the Mossad to rescue Wallenberg from a dacha outside of Moscow.
Really?
There's much to this story.
That's exciting.
And I went to Israel to enlist the Mossad's activity. I had been an exchange student 1963 in Israel on an exchange program working at the Ministry of Agriculture, and who was the minister then? Moshe Dayan. I went back and used those contacts to enter the Mossad's private labyrinth.
Wow.
And get them to be the only nation to take genuine, concrete action
Really?
to rescue Wallenberg while still alive. So I'm proud of my Israeli roots. I
helped-
instigated it.
You instigated
I
Israel
engineered
to
it.
do that with Mossad?
I did.
Wow.
And those very blueprints were sent by the Mossad to our CIA,
That is
used
big.
by Obama, and he says so.
Wow, that is big. That is awesome. Is that in your book?
You
I'm
have-
so glad that you've been with us. I do want to ask you, how can our viewers help in this particular situation? You know, how could they help you?
Well, since your program is beamed into Russia, among other nations, anyone who could help us find the remains of Wallenberg. Admittedly, he'd be 100 years old today, but he is entitled to an honorable burial. Maybe there's a young human rights lawyer with as much fire in his belly as I have for rescuing Wallenberg, who will step forward, man or woman, or a group, who will say, we're going to make it our mission to get to the truth. We're going to find Wallenberg, dead or alive. We're going to get his remains, and we're going to make it possible for Morris and his team to arrange for a burial in the United States of Wallenberg at the appropriate place, and the memorial garden to be built and the marker. This is going to cost maybe $5 million to create and another $5 million to maintain that garden ad infinitum for the rest of the next 100 years.
To help train and teach. It'll be educational somewhat,
Exactly,
I would hope,
and attached
too.
to it will be an Institute for Altruistic Studies that will use Wallenberg as the model of good, effective action. Underline effective, because as you pointed out at the beginning, it's one thing to care, it's another thing to care effectively and be able to take action. It's not a moment for Hamlets to be or not to be.
No.
It's a moment for action.
That was one thing that was another thing that impressed me tremendously with him is my father is an entrepreneur, was a businessman in Hungary, and left everything and, the Nazis took everything, and then the communists took everything, and came to America with nothing, but with his business savvy and his debonair and his knowledge of people, he was able to build himself back up and start business. But he knew how to talk, and he had witty ideas. That's what an entrepreneur does, and that's what
Wallenberg. This was Wallenberg exactly. Wallenberg was charming, bright, aggressive, on a mission. It didn't bother him to ask for things because he knew saving lives was his whole purpose. He manufactured these passports. I mean, somebody could say, well, you can't do that. Well, you can do that. You can do anything it takes to get the job done.
Yes, he was effective and efficient. I love the story about him is that when he took the job, he said, I will not do this unless I have complete autonomy.
That's right.
I will not have to go, I do not want to be under all this diplomatic bureaucracy that I have to follow this, that first. Lives are in danger, and just give me complete autonomy.
Exactly, and give me access to the United States Secretary of State Cordell Hull directly. He had that access. Cordell Hull praised him for his work, but where was Cordell Hull when it came time for rescue of Wallenberg? That's no longer important. What's important is that we close the chapter well with dignity. Let's have the truth. Let's have some good folks over there in Russia rise to the occasion and go about and ask questions, bang on doors, and say, we want Wallenberg, and we want to return him to America.
Well, thank you very much, Morris. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you for your welcome. Glad to be on your show.
Amen.
Join Mitch and Rosalie as they reach an ever-growing worldwide audience through the crossover. We invite you to become a crossover partner right now by calling the number on your screen. For your monthly gift of $30 or more, you will receive the Crossover Partnership Pack, which includes a DVD of today's program, a personal greeting and prayer message from Mitch and Rosalie, more information about the Crossover Project. As you continue to support the Crossover each month, you will receive a new Crossover DVD, a monthly ministry report, and your name will be added to the Healing Room. Call now or log on to our website and join the growing family of Crossover Partners. And be sure to join us again next week as Mitch and Rosalie tackle timely topics and welcome dynamic guests on The Crossover.
Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and